For decades, fans wondered what Jimmy Page truly thought of Ozzy Osbourne. These two legends ruled different corners of rock history. Page with Led Zeppelin, Ozzy with Black Sabbath. But behind the fame and glory, there were rumors, secrets, and silent tension. Now at 81, Jimmy Page is finally speaking out, and what he says is shocking everyone. The truth has been hidden for years, and it's far more emotional and powerful than anyone expected. Stay with us as we uncover what really happened between Jimmy Page and Ozzy Osbourne, and why Page kept quiet for so long. It was the late 1960s when Jimmy Page first heard of a wild young singer from Birmingham, Ozzy Osbourne. At the time, Led Zeppelin had just exploded into the rock world, while Black Sabbath was still forming their sound. Page was curious. Ozzy's voice had a haunting power, and Sabbath's heavy riffs reminded him of the raw energy Zeppelin once played in their early days. Their first real meeting wasn't at a formal party or studio session. It happened backstage at a concert in London. Ozzy, excited and slightly nervous, approached Page and told him how much he respected Led Zeppelin. Page smiled, nodded, and shared a few kind words, but the conversation didn't go deep. To outsiders, it looked like mutual respect, but Page would later admit that he didn't know what to make of Ozzy at first. He was electric, no doubt, but also unpredictable, Page once said. Despite the differences in their styles, Page's bluesy, mystical tone versus Ozzy's dark, heavy metal scream, there was an unspoken connection. They were both redefining music. Still, their paths rarely crossed after that night. The 1970s rolled on, and each band focused on its own journey. But something lingered in Page's mind. Ozzy's strange charm, his chaos, his pain. Years later, Page revealed that he felt both awe and worry for Ozzy. He was a genius, he said, but I could see the storm coming in him, and he wasn't wrong. The secret jealousy no one talked about. While the world admired both Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, few people knew about the quiet tension that existed beneath the surface. Jimmy Page never said it out loud, but he later admitted that Ozzy's growing fame made him feel uneasy at times, not because of competition, but because of how quickly Ozzy became a symbol of rebellion. In the early 70s, Black Sabbath's popularity exploded. Ozzy's wild antics, his stage presence, and that spooky voice captured a new kind of fan. Suddenly, younger rock audiences started shifting their focus. Page noticed it. He respected Ozzy's talent, but part of him wondered if Sabbath's dark themes were taking attention away from Led Zeppelin's more poetic, mythical style. Behind closed doors, Page even told close friends that Ozzy reminded him of a version of himself he had lost. Ozzy was raw, Page said. He wasn't trying to be cool. He just was. I started to envy that. On Ozzy's side, the feeling was different. He had idolized Jimmy Page growing up. He once called him the wizard of the guitar, but even Ozzy sensed the distance. Jimmy always felt like he was watching me, not talking to me, Ozzy said in a 1999 interview. This unspoken jealousy wasn't about hatred. It was about identity. Page was the calm, mysterious guitar god. Ozzy was the loud, unpredictable madman. They were opposites, but mirrors too. That silent tension followed them for years, and Jimmy Page kept it locked away, until now. The day Ozzy almost died, and Page's reaction. In 1982, the world was shaken by a headline. Ozzy Osbourne had bitten the head off a bat on stage. But behind that shocking moment were deeper problems. Ozzy was struggling. Alcohol, drugs, depression, they were all taking over. And one night, Ozzy nearly died. He was found unconscious in a hotel room after a drug binge. Doctors said he was lucky to survive. The news reached Jimmy Page instantly. At the time, Page was also battling his own demons, addiction, grief, and the loss of John Bonham. But when he heard about Ozzy, something inside him shifted. He didn't call Ozzy, he didn't visit, but he watched every update. I couldn't take my eyes off the news, Page later said. It felt like watching a brother fall. Privately, Jimmy began reflecting on their careers. They had both reached legendary status, but at what cost? Page had stepped away from the spotlight. Ozzy kept diving into the chaos, and now it almost killed him. In an interview years later, Page confessed he cried, when he saw a picture of Ozzy in the hospital. He looked like a ghost, and I wondered, was that me too? It was a turning point. From that day, Jimmy Page began speaking more carefully about the dangers of fame. He started encouraging younger musicians to avoid the dark paths he and Ozzy once walked. And though they still didn't speak directly, something unspoken passed between them, a quiet bond of survivors. Each had seen the edge, and both had barely stepped back. Why Jimmy Page stayed silent for so long? For years, fans asked Jimmy Page what he thought of Ozzy Osbourne. In interviews, documentaries, even fan letters, the question always came up. But Page avoided it. He praised Black Sabbath in general, spoke about heavy metal's rise, but never shared deep thoughts on Ozzy himself. People wondered why. Now, at 81, Page finally explains, "I stayed silent because I didn't trust myself to speak kindly," he says. Not because he hated Ozzy, but because seeing Ozzy fall apart reminded him too much of his own struggles. It was like watching a reflection of my worst days, Page admits. In the late 70s and early 80s, both men had suffered addiction, broken relationships, and personal loss. Page's silence was a kind of shield. If he spoke honestly, it might have hurt Ozzy. If he lied, it would have hurt himself. So, he chose to say nothing. But deep inside, Page felt admiration. Ozzy was reckless, but real. He didn't hide his pain. He screamed it into the microphone. Page, on the other hand, played it through guitar strings, but never explained it. "There were times I wanted to call him," Page said, "to say I get it. I've been there too. But I didn't know if it would help or make things worse." By the 2000s, both men had changed. Ozzy had survived, Page had found peace. But the silence between them remained, until now. At 81, Jimmy Page says he no longer wants to hold back. "I should have told Ozzy long ago. What you did surviving it all was nothing short of a miracle." Sometimes silence isn't about disrespect. It's about pain. And now, that silence is finally breaking. The secret respect that grew with time. Though Jimmy Page and Ozzy Osbourne were never close friends, a deep respect quietly grew between them over the years. It wasn't seen in public hugs or social media posts. It was seen in small gestures, like the time Page sent Ozzy a rare guitar book as a gift, or when Ozzy called Page a true master during an award ceremony. Behind the scenes, they were watching each other. Page kept up with Ozzy's solo career, including his controversial TV show, The Osbournes. He admitted he was surprised. He showed a different side of himself, funny, honest, and sometimes heartbreakingly fragile. Ozzy, in turn, always had Page on a pedestal. In one interview, Ozzy said, "Jimmy's the kind of guy who doesn't need to speak loud to be heard. His guitar does all the talking." That line stuck with Page. It was one of the rare compliments that truly touched him. Time changes people. And as they both aged, the wild days of the 70s seemed like a different lifetime. Now in their 70s and 80s, both men began to reflect more, forgive more, and appreciate what they survived. At a music event in 2022, a fan asked Ozzy if he'd ever collaborate with Jimmy Page. Ozzy laughed and said, "If I could keep up with him, I would." Page heard that and smiled. That was the moment he decided, "Before it's too late, I should say what's been in my heart for decades." Because sometimes, the deepest friendships don't start with loud greetings. They begin with quiet respect and last through the storms. The final message from Jimmy Page. At 81, Jimmy Page gave an interview that stopped fans in their tracks. The question came again, "What do you think of Ozzy Osbourne?" But this time, Page didn't dodge it. He looked straight at the camera and said, "Ozzy is one of the strongest men I've ever known." The silence was finally broken. Page went on to explain how he had watched Ozzy's journey closely, not as a critic, but as a quiet supporter. "I saw him fall, and I saw him get back up, again and again. Most people would have been destroyed by what he faced." He spoke of the battles Ozzy fought, not just with addiction, but with health, family problems, and public pressure. And through it all, he kept singing. "That voice never quit," Page said. "Even when his body was breaking down, his spirit didn't." The most powerful moment came when Page shared a message directly to Ozzy. "If you're watching this, I want you to know, I should have told you this long ago. You inspired me. Your madness, your survival, your truth, it mattered. You mattered." Fans around the world were stunned. Two legends, once thought to be miles apart, now stood connected by mutual pain, survival, and respect. Ozzy responded days later with a simple line, "Jimmy, I love you, mate." In the end, this wasn't a story of rivalry. It was a story of time, healing, and the power of unspoken bonds. Page's final message wasn't just for Ozzy, it was for all of us. Sometimes, the strongest words are the ones we wait a lifetime to say. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the Blazing Icons channel. More great information and videos to come.